Welcome, everyone. I'm Deborah Rohde, the director of the Center on the Legal Profession, and it's my great pleasure to introduce these great speakers. I'm just going to give you a little bit about their bios. If I did the whole thing, that would be the entire program. And then I'll throw out a few questions, and then we'll open it up for all of you. Ora Fisher, at the far right, is the vice chair at Latham & Watkins, where she helps to shape the firm's strategic direction and manage its global platform. And in that role, she focuses on strategic planning, client relations, partner recruitment and integration, performance, communications. She recently guided the firm's Silicon Valley office through tremendous growth while serving as its managing partner. And prior to being elected vice chair, her transactional practice centered on mergers, acquisitions, securities, and general corporate matters for both private and public companies in Silicon Valley. To my immediate right, Katie Martin is chair of Wilson Sonsini's board of directors and a partner in the firm's Palo Alto office, where she practices corporate and securities law. She previously served as a member of the policy committee and as leader of business law development, business law department. She's got extensive experience in representing public companies on matters such as corporate governance, compliance, public offerings, private placement, and underwriters in public offerings. And in the middle, Mitch Zuckley from Oric is the chair and chief executive officer. And under Mitch's leadership, the firm has pursued a strategy to be a leading advisor to global technology, innovation, energy, infrastructure, and finance sectors. In 2016 and 17, Financial Times named Oric as the most innovative law firm in North America, and identified by Chambers USA as an eminent practitioner. Mitch is an experienced business and legal advisor who's completed hundreds of venture capital financing, numerous public offerings, mergers, and so forth. And I also want to mention, not least important to all of these roles, they have found time to be invaluable members of the Center's advisory board, which is what provides the support and guidance that makes all our programming like this one possible. So we're all very deeply in their debt. I'm going to just start it off with a few framing questions, and then we'll throw it open to your questions. This is a point at which the market for legal services provided by major law firms, it seems to be changing dramatically. And so we wanted this dialogue between two groups of critical stakeholders in the process, the leaders of these firms, and then you all who are going to be the young lawyers who work there. And one way to think about the conditions that law firms face comes from the military term VUCA, meaning volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And maybe we could just start by asking each of the panelists what they see as the key challenges for their law firm specifically, or for major law firms going forward in this era. So, shall we start with you, Laura?
Sure. Pleasure to be here. Indeed, as Deborah said, Professor Rohde said, these are the two greatest stakeholders in the practice of law, especially big law, namely the future talent, right, of U.S. law firms, together with leadership up here. Happen to be really privileged to be here together with Mitch and Katie. So the biggest challenge, I would say, for law firms, setting aside economy and extraneous factors like that over which we have no control, is keeping our talent engaged as things do indeed evolve. Turning off my phone. It's an exciting time in the profession. I think it's always an exciting time in the profession of law because it's always changing. Artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact practice and our clients is frankly hard to really envision and to graph out how it's going to impact it. And frankly, that's what makes it an exciting time in the profession is thinking through how are we going to counsel clients 5 and 10 years from now to really think through the risks of artificial intelligence and how that is going to impact their companies and their risk profile in ways that they probably can't even imagine. And that's why you all are so important to us, because you're going to bring your creativity and your knowledge of technology and staying on top of an area of law that doesn't exist yet. And you're going to be at the forefront of that, and you're going to be able to bring it to the law firms. At the same time, there's a lot of social change going on, how people work. Do you like working in quiet, closed spaces, or in fact, do you like working in larger public areas? And marrying all of that together in a way that keeps associates engaged is critically important to us, because it's all about the future. At Latham, we talk about all the time that we don't manage the firm for success today, although obviously that's important to us. But what is most important to us is managing the firm so that it is a great place and a great successful place that enables strong careers 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so what do we do now to create the structures and the policies to really incent folks like you to come join us and to start your careers and stay with Latham for a long time? You know, just yesterday I was listening to the radio, and there was an interview, it was on NPR, and there was an interview of somebody who was running a pro bono program in DC around refugees and immigration and whether they're better served, and of course they are, if the immigrants have lawyers representing them through the immigration process and through the citizenship process. And this fellow who's not with the law firm was saying, you know, it can be kind of challenging because a lot of the big law firms that we work with, the associates, if they're not going to be there for 2 or 3 years, it's difficult for them to keep, you know, to take on a case because you want the continuity. And I thought to myself, oh, that hurts. I mean, it hurts on a personal level that is the construct of the profession. But in many ways at Big Law, that is the construct, and we recognize it and we embrace it. And in many ways, we realize that so many lawyers come to us because we're a bridge to another career or a whole set of careers. And the key is for big law firms to continue to be attractive in that way, so that lawyers want to come join us to learn, to get those skills. And if in fact those lawyers choose to practice elsewhere, that's fine. There's lots of career paths in the law. And in fact, the reason there aren't more people in here today is because there's another session going on talking about alternative career paths in the law. And so we very much recognize that and embrace it. But it's a balance. It's a balance to keep everybody engaged. And so I think I'll end it there and keep the conversation going.
So, like Aura, I'm delighted to be here and really honored to be part of this panel. And I think Aura did an extremely good job of describing one of the 4 key challenges that we have, which is all those that are related to talent. And that talent equation not only relates to you as lawyers, but also actually relates to staff. And increasingly, I think that law firms have a higher ratio of people who are non-lawyers who are providing interesting and important parts of what we do, like data analytics experts and the like. I also think there are 3 other forces that are at work, and I'm going to show you something that I don't expect you to be able to read, but I asked a group of 20 partners who are in their first 3 years of partnership to spend the better part of a year ago thinking about what were the biggest challenges they saw in our profession and for our firm, and to think about how they would like the firm to change today to be the firm they want to work at 5 years down the road. And the first part of that exercise was to think about what were the forces of market disruption. I thought they did a fabulous job, and they listed 3 broad buckets in addition to the talent one, which Aura so greatly addressed. The first was business evolution. The second was a combination of flat demand and increased entrance. And the third was a changing dynamic with clients. And let me sort of highlight a couple pieces of each of those where at a quick broad brush. I think that the concept of business evolution is a real one. Increasingly, I think our clients are asking us to have more analytical rigor in the answers that we are providing for them. So in a sense, your experiential qualitative stuff, I think, is still quite important, and certainly the judgment we provide is important. But analytical rigor is, I think, increasingly becoming a big theme. In addition, there's a huge problem right now, which is that business models are changing faster for our clients than the regulatory schemes can keep up with them. Uber's an obvious example, or Lyft. But that's an incredibly exciting thing. And increasingly, that's a bigger part of our business. And it's one actually where the talent in this room is among the most important to our ability to sort of think about where business evolution is going. I actually think it's one of the things that makes practicing in a big firm context today very exciting. The concept of increased competition and flat demand, actually, I think there's a lot of, it's true that for a long time there was flat demand. The last year was probably the best year that law firms as a whole have had for a long, long time. Not easy to declare victory or think that we're out of the woods, but it is certainly true that additional entrants will come into the marketplace and will nibble at the bottoms and gradually, I think, and provide challenges, at least with respect to commodity work, for everybody. The last piece, though, that has not yet been addressed, I think, is this one around changing client dynamics. It seems to me there was pretty much a watershed in 2008. And in 2008, general counsels became far more important, in my view, than they had been before. It started with a strong cost pressure, but the dynamic has changed substantially. This inside counsel revolution concept of folks using smaller and smaller panels, working with fewer law firms, consolidating more work with them, yet at the same time, picking the absolute best people for a particular project and not having loyalty to a particular long-term relationship. That's a really powerful change. And in addition, it's been coupled with what I think is a good thing, which is an increased demand for diversity on the teams that support clients, which relates to the talent issue as well. So a lot to talk about there, but those broad themes, the business is changing. There's more competition than ever. Our relationship as service providers to clients is changing, and absolutely positively, the most important of those is we're a talent business, and our ability to identify, attract, retain, advance talent is more dear now than it ever has been, with more alternatives, I think, for people. So I'll pass it on to Katie.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, and thank you. I'd just like to reiterate what Ora and Mitch said. I really appreciate being here, so thank you for having us, Professor, and for giving us the opportunity to talk with you. It's kind of an interesting time. I mean, I completely agree with what Ora and Mitch just said. I think all big law firms are experiencing a lot of the same issues. Wilson Sonsini is probably, I think, we're definitely smaller than Latham. I think we're much smaller than Orrick, too. So we're a little smaller in terms of size, and I think scale is proving to be an important aspect of law firm life these days. So, Wilson Sonsini started we're still a first-generation firm. Larry Sonsini is our former chair, and he still practices law. He's still at our firm. So we're in the process of an evolution as a firm in and of itself, but it's occurring at a time when the industry is also evolving, and so we're finding that it's opportunistic for us to tap into the environment that's changing around us while we're evolving into the next generation. And in fact, my stepping into this board chair role, part of that came from an impetus within our firm to actually change quicker, change faster, be more innovative. And part of that is a function of the environment that's out there. Competition is fierce, and I view that not just relative to getting business, and which it is. I mean, we're all feeling pressure from price pressure. So, and our clients aren't just looking for the lowest dollar, cost of legal services. Obviously, they don't come to our firms for that. But as between our firms, they will put pressure on all of us to deliver services at a much lower cost than we have traditionally been able to provide those services. And so that requires us within our law firms to really reflect on, well, how are we going to do that? This work is still really important for us. It's really important, especially for our new lawyers. One of the areas that Wilson Sonsini has been very well known for is IPO work, for example. I worked on the Lyft IPO, which has been in the press recently. The competition for those types of IPOs, there's incredibly great law firms all competing for the same business. and there's fixed fee caps and things of that sort. So we have to get a lot smarter, a lot more process oriented, a lot more project management oriented. You know, we want to leverage technology. And what we've found is that the younger generation lawyers within our firm are chomping at the bit for all those changes. And I actually think it will improve the quality of the lives of the lawyers, make it better. But of course, you know, change takes time, and so implementing it is taking a little bit of time. But in the middle of that, one of the other aspects of competition is competition for talent. So we've seen more law firm, you know, turnover in terms of partners. And more recently, it's been I think growing over the last several years. I actually lateraled to Wilson Sonsini from my old firm as a partner back in 1999, 20 years ago. So it's not like it's brand new, but the pace of it has certainly changed. And part of the reason for that is the point that Mitch made, which is that clients are really looking for people with very, very specialized talent. And so if you don't actually have the right people with the right experience, with the right skills, it's sometimes very, very hard to even compete to get the business. So you've got to make an environment within your law firm where your partners, and I think Aura spoke to this, where your partners, your associates, the staff, people want to come, they want to work there, and they want to be there. And it's not just about competing in terms of who's got the highest profits per partner. You know, a lot of the data that gets reported about partnership profits, et cetera, you know, those are just table stakes. That's not what keeps people in the seats and causes people to want to come and stay at those firms. We have to make it a great place for them to want to be, make it the best platform for them to work at. So right now, it's a time of, you know, especially for Wilson Sonsini, as we move from a first to a second generation firm, and as the technology industry has really matured around us as well, it's a great opportunity for us to be reflecting on all of that, starting first and foremost with our culture. So I personally have been spending a lot of time in that regard.
So let me follow up a little bit on that, because you just talked about some of the challenges in innovation and moving your organizations forward. But of course, lawyers are notoriously risk averse, and your partners are generally doing pretty well. So how do you think about overcoming what is that? Status quo bias. Some leaders have analogized leading colleagues in firms to herding cats, and noted that sometimes you can only make progress by moving the cat food around a little and changing some of the reward structure. So can you speak to some of the challenges in getting people who are, you know, already doing pretty well by their own standards to make the changes that are needed to accommodate exactly the kinds of dynamics you've just discussed?
I'm happy to go first. I mean, it is true that large law firms are unusual organizations, and one can't analogize them to a lot of cats. You know, Latham & Watkins has 700 partners. That's a lot. We've got 2,500, 2,600 lawyers. Good news, it doesn't feel like anywhere near that large to me. And I think there are a lot of forces at play that do allow us to innovate and stay focused on innovation. And the reason I say that are, you know, for one thing, our lawyers live in our communities, in our economies. And so we know what the hot companies are, what the evolving technologies are. We listen to our general counsels applying pressure for alternative fee arrangements and that sort of thing. It is still very much the billable hour that survives. People have been talking about the death of the billable hour for at least 20 years. And it hasn't gone away in large measure because clients like it. It allows them to feel like they know what they are paying for. But I won't digress into fees and the billable hour and all that stuff. But know that our lawyers are all on the front line. So as large as that is, 700 partners at Latham, and I think you'll hear from Oric and Wilson, that we are very flat organizations. So our partners and all of our colleagues, our counsel, our associates, we're all on the front lines hearing what clients are demanding, and therefore demanding the firm to change and to move forward so that we can accommodate that demand and stay in front of it. And at Latham, we've got certain structures in place that I think enable that. So, for example, our firm is led by an executive committee, and we have quote-unquote junior partners. We're all elected, all 9 of us are elected to the executive committee through rotating terms and whatnot. But we're structurally organized in a way so that at least 2 of our members are partners who have been partners for 10 years or less. We make sure that we have junior partner representation on our committee because those are the folks that have the longest runway and that are, in all likelihood, the folks who are going to have the most of these evolving kinds of concerns. And so I think we have it built into our infrastructure.
So,
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Go for it.
One more thing, which is, that's one of the wonderful things about the practice of law and what you all have in front of you to the extent you want to practice with a big law firm. In that, when I talk about that horizontal structure, we're colleagues together in this. We're not hierarchical. And so being part of a large professional service organization, I mean, yes, one can be at the beck and call of a whole bunch of clients and a whole bunch of partners, but at the same time, there's a lot of independence that you have and a lot of room for bringing creativity to the practice that you want to structure for yourself. Obviously, it has to work for the law firm and whatnot, but there's a lot of independence, a lot of really great creative thinking and collaboration that goes on at law firms. So I'm long on them.
So I think that like Latham and Wilson, we're a global firm, but tech is an important part of what we do, and Silicon Valley and Northern California are an important part of our origins. And I think for all 3 of our firms, we're all kind of on the spectrum of highly innovative and pretty flat collaborative places. The way we think about innovation is to think that there are 4 different ways that law firms innovate, and that everyone can play a role in innovation, and to really have a dialogue and encourage us to think about where each of us can best contribute to innovation. The first place is actual client innovation, meaning coming up with new products or services that respond or somehow improve something. So for example, all of us are corporate lawyers, and all of us know that the fundraising practice for a venture financing or a seed financing was really inefficient. And so you could kind of use convertible debt, but there are some problems with that. You could do a watered down equity round, but it wasn't perfect. And so someone came around with the idea of coming up with something called the SAFE, which kind of took the best qualities of both of those structures, and that was a big improvement. So one lane of innovation is constantly thinking about improving products for clients, and we actually think that's the easiest place for all of our partners to play a role. And we really celebrate people who do that because they're moving the profession forward, they're delivering greater value, and it doesn't require someone to be a techie or something to really be thinking about better, more cost-effective, elegant legal solutions. The second is to actually think about ways to restructure processes to make them way more efficient or to leverage tech. Few of our partners are equipped to do that, but those who do tend to really love doing it and really feel empowered when we implement the solutions that they want us to do. And we celebrate that. We give a big innovation prize every year. We ask people to spend 2% of their time thinking about one of those sorts of types of innovation. And the idea there is to create a culture around it where those who really want to do that type of innovation are drawn to it. The third type of innovation that we think of is actually thinking about being better at identifying and adopting technologies that are developed outside our firm, to be very thoughtful consumers about what's going on. We have something called the Observatory, where we track about 500 different legal tech solutions, and often we pilot them. And we have a group of people led by our chief innovation officer, she is a lawyer, but she does not practice as a lawyer, to really think about where can we leverage what's going on in the outside world beyond the confines of what we do and get better at that. And we've created a little venture fund to invest in legal technologies that we will then try to beta test to really get a more holistic sense of the market. And we feel like that's been a useful thing. The last area around innovation is to actually be a human Sherpa to explain what we're doing well in one context to other clients. And we have a couple people who are really good at doing that, who can go to a client as a trusted advisor and say, General Counsel, I'd like to tell you, ma'am, about something that we've noticed that another client is doing without giving out a trade secret that may be of interest to you in terms of the way they're approaching it, and it might be a benefit for you. So along all 4 of those dimensions, we think there's room for people to innovate. And I think our job as a leadership team, and like Latham and like Wilson, I think it's a collaborative effort among a lot of people, is to create a culture where people feel good about that. My own experience, my predecessor tried to really say, there's an awful lot of change coming. Here's a vision of the future. Here's a we're going to become irrelevant if we don't change. Read Susskind's book. It should terrify you. Had no effect whatsoever. It didn't motivate people in the slightest, I think. It was sort of interesting, but I've got 12 things to do today, and that'll happen to me tomorrow. Thinking instead about each of those areas as a place where innovation is relevant to your exact day-to-day, and creating a culture that reinforces and celebrates small victories that are happening now as opposed to a big picture thing, I think has propelled us to be more innovative, if only more incrementally. I don't know whether or not there might be some magic wand where people are able to respond beautifully to that moment on the horizon, but that has not been our culture or our experience. And I don't think that we responded well to that crisp vision of the future. Just wasn't. It was hard to herd the cats toward that direction, at least for a firm.
Yeah.
And I guess, not to repeat everything that was already said, I would just say that, Wilson Sonsini, about a year and a half ago, when we went through the governance change that resulted in me stepping into the board chair, part of that came out of feedback that we had received from our members, and also from our associates, where there was some frustration with our lack of innovation, the fact that we weren't moving fast enough. So my role, since I've been in this role, rather than trying to worry about convincing people to change, and the importance of it, that was already well understood by everybody in our firm. And so what they've really focused on, at least are hoping that I can help achieve with the leadership that I have now, is to help move the firm forward more quickly than we had been going, because there was a real desire and real need to make a lot of changes at a lot of different levels, both operational, and a lot of this is because we see a lot of change happening in our clients, right? I mean, a lot of our clients, they've changed how they function within their legal departments, how they deal with outside law firms, how they procure services. Law firms are changing a lot of how they market, how they pitch their business, the resources they use, et cetera. There's there's a lot of new business development efforts that are occurring within law firms that didn't happen before. So there's a lot of change that's happening across the board, and smart lawyers, and again, lawyers really are on the front line. They're seeing it, they're out there, they're competing for business, and they're all, like you, they're all very ambitious, and they're very goal-oriented and success-oriented, and if they feel that something about the firm they're in is holding them back, they're going to want to speak to it. So right now, we are in a time where I think law firm leadership can tap into the desire on lawyers in particular to make sure that we really turn the flywheel quickly during this time of change, because we know that it will slow, the pace will slow, but we've got some macro trends right now that we're benefiting from, and we should really try and innovate within the dynamic of this fast changing environment. So, one of the things that we're focused on, we've very focused on technology innovation. We've got an innovation council now, and he's a former associate of ours who just had a real interest in it, and he's formed a committee, and his job is to get people involved at the management level, at the board level, within his peers, all throughout our firm, both within the United States and outside the United States. He's doing a phenomenal job. And, and I think that's one of the things that we found to be effective in our firm is that dictating from on high, because we're so flat, these organizations are so flat, that dictating from on high really doesn't accomplish much of anything. So what you really need to do is you need to just buy into the inspiration that's coming from within the firm, tap into that, and then leverage that. And that's one of the things that we've been focusing on.
That's so interesting because everything you're saying is so consistent with what the research shows. I mean, just telling people, the cliche, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. That doesn't motivate people, the fear-mongering. And so, you all are so fortunate to be in Silicon Valley with people who are really leading. In my next edition of the Casebook is going to talk about exactly what's happening here, building in the Innovation Council, the Innovation Awards, giving people the license to really think about it and reward them for it. I'm just going to ask one last question, and then we're going to open it up to all of you. It's what advice would you give to law students now about how they should think about their professional development to be successful in the future? And maybe Aura and Katie, you could also say a word about how you think your gender has affected your approach and how firms are dealing with the challenges of diversity and inclusion, and what advice you might have for women in the profession. And Mitch, you can also maybe add some things about the whole problem of getting more lawyers of color, and especially those who are first gen and maybe come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and the difficulties for big firms when they're all competing with each other and with general counsel for what's not a robust enough talent pool, and law schools bear some responsibility for that, but it's the world we live in. So maybe you could just talk about advice and the whole issue of inclusion, and then we'll throw it open.
Sure. Who would like to start? Maybe Kate, do you want to start? Because you've had a chance to go last each time.
Yeah, no, okay. So I would like to make a pitch like Aura. I think that if you're a law student and you're interested in becoming a lawyer, the best place to start, without a doubt, is a big law firm, because we are structured with incredible training and opportunities. We have incredible clients, we have incredible opportunities, and more than ever, for a lot of the reasons we've talked about, the struggles that law firms have, the challenges we have, we've gotten really smart about how to mentor, how to create more of a personal touch with people. I mean, I think some of the basics of those things, we lost over, the last 20 years ago, you may have had a mediocre experience in that regard. But I think what you'll find now, lawyers understand that you really have to make a connection with the people you're working with, because they have so many opportunities. They're going to walk out the door if you don't. So it's a great opportunity. Go into a law firm, be mentored, be well trained, and then the doors are open wide to go into a lot of different places. So I do think, at this stage where you are from a professional development standpoint, success in law school, obviously, which opens doors to job opportunities, it seems like, and I, of course, knew when I was in law school that I wanted to be a corporate securities lawyer. I don't know why I understood that at the time, but I also took a lot of the courses that I thought would be relevant. But I also interact with a lot of lawyers who don't know what they want to be, if they want to specialize in a particular area, and then they have a different strategy, which is to take the things that are interesting to them. And then, our law firm, for example, when we hire a first-year associate, we give them the chance to interact. In fact, we encourage them to go to many different groups so that they get the opportunity to get, introduced to a lot of different areas, so that they're not pigeonholed right off the bat. So that's one thing. I think in terms of being a woman in the practice of law, I started practicing law in 1987, so I've been practicing law for about 32 years. I started in San Francisco and moved to the Silicon Valley in 92, but that's because back then you had to do that in order to work, with technology companies, because that work was down here. And I would say that my entire career I have felt that I have always benefited from being a woman. And I think part of that I would give a lot of credit to the fact that it's, the Silicon Valley, people didn't seem to mind. What they were really focused on was merit, are you doing a good job? So I think, though, going forward, I think women have huge opportunities in the practice of law. I mean, for me personally, it's been an incredible career. I love what I've been able to do, both from a practitioner perspective as well as law firm management perspective. I've raised 2 children. I've had a fulsome family life. And I think part of it is just making sure, regardless of what your priorities are in life, that you focus on those priorities, and you make them priorities. You make your health, you make your mental, your well-being, and then your career also. All of it has to go together. And if you focus on all of those things and make them priorities, this is a wonderful place for people to have an incredible career. And I've seen people both, stay in law firms, which was the right path for me, and I've never looked back on that. But I've also had a lot of friends who, at some point, went off and went in-house, and they've had incredible opportunities and journeys there. So it's and then just as many others have gone into academics, or others have gone into the government. And again, the choices are really open-ended. We've also seen many go into executive management teams in non-legal roles. So it's really a wonderful way to start a career and provide a foundation that's going to be serve you well long-term, regardless of where you want to go.
So I would agree with all that. Let me just start by saying I probably am the worst person in the world to give career advice to anybody. I thought I wanted to teach federal courts in a law school when I went to law school, and I still do, I think. But somehow I've been doing this for a while, and as I reflect on all of my friends, and classmates who've had good careers either in or outside the law, I think that the people who've had a really successful, rewarding approach there's been two common elements. The first is they've been able to identify and try to follow what they're passionate about. And the second is they've wanted to do something that was bigger than for themselves. They chose to work hard at something because they thought they were making a positive contribution in some manner beyond simply work. And that's up to all of us to decide what makes you happy and feel fulfilled. But I do think the combination of finding something you're passionate about and doing something that you think allows you to do something that has social value, those are the things that ultimately make one happy and feel fulfilled in a job. And that may be starting in a big law firm is a great place to go to start, and it may well be the place that you want to stay. Of my three best friends and I all decided to work at the same law firm, and I was the one who was sort of reluctant and thought, "Gosh, I'm not sure I want to work at a big law firm." And I'm the only one still practicing at a big law firm. So I don't know how that all happened. It may have been by accident, but it may have just been the right thing for each of us, and we didn't know it at the time. But each of us went into that journey, I think, thinking a little bit about trying to feel satisfied. And what I loved about being in a big law firm is I did feel well trained. I also, most importantly, I had some really great relationships, both with clients and people. And as I reflect, in a way I didn't really know at the time, I think for me, relationships matter more than ideas. I guess that's probably why I'm not a law professor. But meaning that I'm not able to wrestle with big ideas. But ultimately, it was those relationships that were forged with clients and with the people I worked that I did not want to leave behind. It made the opportunity cost of switching to do something I was more intellectually interested in doing harder and harder. And it's only become more and more hard because those layers of relationships become deeper. And I really feel like I owe my career to a couple people who took a chance on spending time, effort, energy in terms of sponsoring me. And feel a great obligation, by the way, to repay that. And I think most people who have had an experience of being mentored or sponsored by people recognize that they owe some cosmic debt to return that and are actually quite good at doing it themselves if they're self-reflective. For me, I do feel like there's this great community of people I'm a part of, and that's what makes me excited to show up in the office every day and try to move the ball forward and to make some changes, and it's because of the loyalty and connection with those people. Some of them are clients I've been working with for more than 20 years. Some of them are associates I feel incredibly, they've worked incredibly hard with me, and I learned a lot from them, and they've made us a better firm, and I feel this obligation to get them going on their careers. So I think that no matter what you want to do, going into a place that creates an opportunity to be in a situation where you might find a sponsor that matters is a big deal. I'd also note, by the way, that the legal profession is challenging in terms of diversity and inclusion. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Half the people coming out of law school are women. 20% of the partners at big law firms are women. If you look at the people who are part of management, it's typically smaller than that. If you look at the people at the top of the pay scale, it's smaller than that too. That's a huge problem. Now, as a leader of a law firm, it's also a huge opportunity. If you can retain that talent as opposed to lose it, it's a huge competitive advantage. And so all of us, who are in this room, I think are very cognizant of that and are trying very hard to become a great place for women to practice, to advance, and to have great careers. Same with diverse attorneys. We formed some advisory boards with some of our most important general counsels to ask them the question specifically of what do you do in your own in your businesses and your legal departments to identify, attract, retain, advance diverse talent and women talent. We've learned a lot of very practical advice by standing on their shoulders and implementing some of their policies. And so I think that, I'm sure that all of us are doing exactly that kind of thing.
Well, and in fact, I think, Mitch, to that point, to be honest, I think to solve this diversity issue, we're going to have to partner very closely with our clients because part of it is changing the way things, how business has been sought, how business is handed out, and we really need the clients to help us in that regard, or it's not going to change very fast.
And I think that they
And
are.
they want it to change, because a lot of the pitches now are, demanding statistics and things on your law firm demographics, on diversity. And so, yeah, so we're right there with them, but it's like, okay, but you got to help us too, because we're very focused and committed to this. Yeah.
Let's see, I'll share some vignettes that hopefully dovetail with the content that came just before me. So a few vignettes. When I went to college, I had no desire to go to law school. That was not part of my plan. I went to Wharton undergrad, had a degree in accounting and finance, and marched off to New York. I had grown up in the Midwest, marched off to New York, and worked at Morgan Guaranty Trust Company, JP Morgan, for a few years. Because I had, in the end, gotten this practical undergraduate degree, and I wanted to go off and work. And in a series of jobs at JP Morgan, I found myself working with lawyers a lot. And I found myself over time liking what they were doing, the lawyers that is, more than what I was doing as a banker at the time. And what I loved about what the lawyers were doing is they were constantly learning. They were serving a variety of clients, digging deep into the legal issues that applied, working hard alongside the bankers on getting a deal done. And the deal would close, the lawyers were paid, the risk ended up on the bank's balance sheet, and the lawyers moved on to the next project and did the whole thing all over again, working collaboratively with one another on the legal team, and then of course with the bank. And I thought, what a great business model. That is fabulous. And I also thought it would be a nice time to return to school and learn for learning's sake and whatnot. And off I went. I went to Michigan Law School. And this was a while ago. I graduated law school then in 1991. And I remember one of my professors said to me, third year of law school, getting ready to graduate and all that stuff. And one professor said in one of his courses, you can never underestimate how much a law firm cares about you. And what a terrible thing to hear, right? So I'm here to tell you a couple of things, right? That is not true. Law firms care deeply about talent, and I think that's what you're hearing. However, there is a real nugget of wisdom in that comment, in that you have to own your own career. It's yours. Somebody else is not going to own it for you. I mean, they might try to. They'll be happy to give you advice, but you have to know yourself and know your ambitions and your priorities and your areas of interest, because nobody else is going to be able to dictate it for you, nor should they, right? It's your life, and you're going to want to chart your path. But the advice that I offer in connection with that, and in connection with my own career, like Katie, I went to law school with a desire to do transactional work, and that's what I did. I joined Latham's then brand new San Francisco office in 1991, and I've remained in the Bay Area since then in a variety of different roles at Latham. I was a regular practicing partner, and of course now I've been in management for a bunch of time, and I'm on our executive committee, and a vice chair of the firm. And what has guided me throughout that time wasn't a series of 5-year plans or anything like that. I never had that. It was more about doing my work, feeling like I owned it, right? And taking responsibility for your work, taking more and more responsibility, pushing others out of the way, not because you want to get them out of the way and get to the top, but because you want to do as much as you can so that you have a rewarding set of experiences on your matters. Because that's what having a career, to me, has been all about.
That's such a good note on which to close this out and open it up to all of you, because you guys have raised such great questions. Sean.
Thank you for coming. A couple of you talked about mentorship and how that's really important. It sounded a little like, I was lucky to have a good mentor, and I'm wondering, now that you're in leadership positions at these firms, what your firms are doing to not just promote good leadership and developing the younger generation, but actually incentivizing so it's not the thing that comes behind, billing more hours or something that's going to.
Yeah. Well,
I'll just mention, we had a Women's Leadership Academy last year where we brought all the women from all throughout our firm to meet. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback they gave us was they loved the mentor program we had as first-year associates, but we didn't carry it on long enough. We also have mentors for new lawyers who lateral into the firm, and for partners who lateral in and they need somebody to partner with them to get better integrated. But what we realized we weren't doing was creating a more formal mentoring program that would really help our associates go from their first and second years up through, either their decision to leave or hopefully their decision to stay and become a partner. So that's what we're in the process of actually refurbishing and re-implementing a new program there. And it's going to be opt-in, not because we don't think we could mandatorily, institute something, but we just think that mentoring is better done when it's an opt-in. But we are also putting in place the incentives to encourage that. So we're also revamping our member compensation programs to take into account a lot of different things to reward our partners for things that they do. And one of the things that we're going to be rewarding them for is good mentorship, because we view that as really, really important to the future investment in the firm.
That's great.
We're similar. We've tried a variety of carrot and stick methods. Carrots typically work better. That said, carrots around with some formality around them, and I think we like to use the phrase that sunshine's the best disinfectant. And so by our nature, most of our lawyers are kind of competitive, and if we spread light on who's being really highly regarded as a great mentor by 360-degree reviews and celebrate those people, it creates an enormous dynamic for others to want to have that same spotlight as an outstanding person who's made really important impacts on people who've been successful in the firm. So I think that we're always trying to tinker with how to get it better. It's hard to mandate great mentorship or sponsorship, but boy, we're trying a lot. And actually, we spend a lot of time reading the social science on this stuff. We literally have a chief talent officer whose job it is to go out and talk to McKinsey and talk to Deloitte and stuff like that and ask what they do and try to implement it. And we're pretty inveterate experimenters, and so sometimes things totally fail. Sometimes they get traction, and we try to do more of the stuff that seems to be working. But we have no special sauce.
Yeah, we too have a bunch of different mentoring programs and training programs. These are both formal and informal academies and the like. And the other thing I will throw in that I think helps the system work is that at Latham we have a 2-year unassigned program for our new first years who join the firm, similar to what Katie was describing. So associates come and they can try out different areas and find out what area they're most interested in. And along the way, there are market forces at work, as it were, because for the groups where there's active mentorship and guidance, those might be the areas that associates are most apt to join. And so there's sort of a market forcing function to keep everybody on their best behavior and indeed training and mentoring the talents that folks come and join their groups.
Yeah. Sarah.
So how are you guys handling combating kind of burnout for your associates, especially given like technological advances that truly incentivize you to work round clock? Especially given that the competition for talent, probably a huge impetus for why a lot of associates want to leave and go in-house, for example, might be the change in lifestyle. Right.
It's a fabulous question, and we thank you for asking it, seriously, because wellness and mental wellness is very much a topic of discussion now. It's certainly at Latham, and I know at other big law firms as well. Yeah. We're just introducing into our New York office and our Los Angeles office which are a couple of our larger offices, a wellness center so that people can get guidance and help right on site. And we offer a lot of other employee assistance programs and the like. But it's very much a topic that the partnership writ large is talking about. And it's not just associate burnout, right? It's partner burnout. It's burnout at all different levels of the organization. And there have been a number of things that have happened that have been, highly publicized, just this week and things a year ago that very much weigh on people's mind because the practice of law is highly, highly stressful. There's no doubt about it. And it can go 24/7. And so it's incumbent on everybody in the law firm community to watch themselves and watch those around them to look for signs of distress because they are there. And we ask all of our colleagues to be on the watch for that. And if, somebody's working too hard, reminding them they can say no. Associates don't have to take every assignment. And so we do have, while everybody, going back to something I said before, is of course responsible for themselves, at the same time, it's a community of lawyers and other staff around us, and we want to take care of everybody. And we are putting in more rigorous, sort of systematic programs to make sure that we do that.
So very similar answer for us. I'd just say two other quick things. The first is I was surprised at how much interest there was in some meditation stuff that we've been doing. We had a person who suggested it would be great to do a clinic on meditation in New York, and sure, I'll make it happen. And I was shocked that there was like a standing room only level of interest in this about a year and a half ago. And I think something like 70% of our lawyers have participated voluntarily in a meditation training program and actually would describe themselves as practicing on a regular basis. I actually think since we've done that, we're a much happier place, first thing I know. Second, and it's palpable, that's making a difference. Second thing I know is that we're pretty good about monitoring people and being a little paternalistic and saying, hey, you've built more than 200 hours 3 months in a row. That's probably not a sustainable pace. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Let's talk about that and think about how we can do that. We've hired a couple people who are designed to be, the sort of federal government with respect to this issue, not the state government. They preempt, and they can come in and say it's our job to make sure we retain talented people, and we are now the pros on how to do that around the firm. And rather than allow this to be a case of first impression in each office and practice, it seems like you've got a pattern of people who are very clearly going to burn out here, and we need to think about how to implement that and change it. And that's actually been also helpful. People have largely bought into that and been pretty receptive. Last thing I'd say, by the way, someone gave me advice like 25 years ago to exercise every day, and I completely ignored it. And I wish I had not. Only recently have I been realizing, like, God, how have I been missing this whole magic formula, for so long? And I wish I had paid more attention to that. I think it'd be a lot healthier, and I would have slept a lot better in the last 25 years or something like that had I done that. And I just say that, more personal thing, like, as a late bloomer in terms of focusing on how magical it is in terms of managing stress, it's pretty great. And I hope that I get the same, someone gave me the same heartfelt advice 25 years ago. Say, that fit guy, he's fine. But I really wish I'd listened to it. So from a non-fit person who's trying to become more fit, I would encourage you to take it to heart that the benefits associated with that are kind of a big deal.
I'm just going to follow one second up because, Mitch, I was listening to a program on NPR by the head of the Harvard Women's Wellness Program maybe 15 years ago, and I had a half-time administrative job, and my life was chaotic because you can't do these things half-time. You can't meet with half a student, go to half a faculty. And so I was just cutting everything out that wasn't, essential. And what this woman said, somebody called in and said, what's the one piece of advice you would give to someone interested in wellness? And she said, well, I'm going to fight the question. I'll give two. The first is deal with any substance abuse issues. And the second, she said, is exercise with a friend. Because you will find, you get all the benefits that you just described, and physiologically stress from exercise. If you do it with a friend, you will get the psychological benefits, and you will also be less likely to cancel. And I said, okay, let me try that. And I've now converted other members of this faculty, because when you're really stressed, your tendency is to just having coffee with friends, having, exercise. And that was so much the wrong decision. And I found I was more productive if I built that time in, and sure was a lot happier. And, maybe I'll live longer. But that, to me, now I'm just spreading the gospel, I wish I'd known it sooner too.
Well, I think everything's been said, so I can keep my comments brief. But yeah, we've introduced yoga on site now, and you'd be surprised the number of lawyers that love that. We do monitor. We're very closely monitoring how hard our lawyers are working, and we will intervene if we think that they're going to burn out. Excuse me. I think that was I'm
Yes.
gonna go cough.
Well, you go cough, I'll get another question, because there's several more.
Regarding our discussions on culture, like how has this played out, and has it made you reassess like your reward structures in terms of how you compensate partners or assign work?
So we define our culture in a lot of different ways, but one of its key elements at Latham is teamwork and about it orienting ourselves around a team, because that's how you deliver the best client service, and that's how you enjoy your work the most, or at least people at Latham feel that way. Well, like, for example, for myself, when I think about when I made that decision many years ago to go out to work from, moving from Wall Street to go to law school, the one thing I didn't like about law school was that when it came to exam time, yes, there were outline groups and whatnot, but otherwise the exam itself, or certainly the bar exam, pressure to get that done and done right was strictly on my shoulders, right? There was no sharing of that burden and that responsibility, as opposed to when you're practicing law and you're in a corporate legal environment. You're collaborating with other people. You're throwing ideas around. You're divvying up work so that the team can make the deadline. You're sharing ideas with a client, and it's very much a collaboration. So at Latham, the culture is all around the team, and so we have incentive structures with respect to business development. I'm focusing on partners in particular that really focus on bringing the law firm's resources to bear for the client and doing something we call, cross-selling, unlocking the platform, allowing other areas of the law firm to get to work with the client. And that's very much our culture. And so it's very tied up neatly with our incentive structure.
So I've been in this job for 5 years, and about a year into it, kind of announced a revised strategic plan for us, and had 3 prongs, and it's incredibly simple. First was to focus on 3 sectors: tech, energy, and finance. The second was to be the best law firm to work for, and the third was to try to be the most innovative. And whether or not we have success at those things, there are benchmarks we measure against all the time, and we're constantly trying to be a great place to work. It's not because it's not only because of us. It's because we think our clients care deeply about attrition, and we have 5 specific ways we define whether or not we're a great place to work. But the whole point is we're constantly trying to come up with incentives to reinforce that's important to us. I will say that when I announced it as a strategic tenet, there was definitely a moment where people are like, "Where's the old chairman? Like, who is this clown from California? This is such a soft and candy-ass strategic point. I can't imagine that this is serious. Like, what is wrong with this guy?" And it was definitely like, you got to be kidding. But now 5 years in, it seems impossible to believe that that's true, because we've seen that it's actually worked, and our retention rates are much, much better than they were before. Similarly, I think the quality of people that we're hiring out of law school is dramatically better. I think we've hired like 19 former Supreme Court clerks in the past 4 years, and that's one measure. It happens to be a measure that we're good at, so we recite it all the time, right? But it's an important thing that we're constantly reinforcing. But I will say, crossing that chasm, there's definitely some people who, in particular in New York, who thought I had completely lost it, and that this was an absurd kind of strategic goal. But it passed reasonably quickly, actually, and fortunately, we got some victories reasonably fast. And a lot of that's just luck sometimes. We had this one person that we promoted to partner. She was a woman who she was fabulous, and had been working in New York as a litigator and wanted to move to Richmond, Virginia. Her mom, she was an only child. Her dad had died. Her mom was sick, and she wanted to be with her mom. And I said, "Great, you can go down there." And then the question was whether we should put her up for partner that year or wait. And thought we should put her up for partner, and there was some rigorous debate about that. Are you kidding? She's not working out in an office. What are you doing? And we took the chance on a divided vote and made her a partner. And the next year, she was like an American lawyer, 40 under 40 person. The general counsel of Dow wrote us a letter saying what a courageous move this was, and everyone's like, "That was a great idea. I was 100% behind that." There were an awful lot of people who thought that was brilliant. It was luck that sort of thing actually snowballed into to somehow proving very quickly that this focus actually made sense for us, and it made business sense, and it that it was a way to attract and retain really talented people. So, sometimes things, fall your way, and that was one. Sometimes they don't, and that one did fall our way, and helped create a snowball effect that our firm kind of got behind this in a way that I think it was a little bit apprehensive about to begin with. Part of it was probably just my articulation of it. It's intuitively obvious you want to retain great people and be a great place to work, but it's not something that had been said as much 5 years before, I think, and is. And I think we're all probably a little bit more thoughtful about this issue. And competition is harder from our clients today than it was 5 years ago. So we're all thinking more about that, probably.
I think I missed the question. Do you mind just repeating the question?
No, we're going to get you another one.
Oh, okay.
In Professor Rhodes' class, we talked a lot about how lawyers become leaders, and a lot of what we talked about has to do with how lawyers become leaders by being good lawyers, but not necessarily because of their leadership or managerial skills. So I'm curious about the extent to which you all feel like you got adequate training and preparation in what you wished you'd gotten before you got to a leadership role.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In fact, I read the materials for your class today. They were excellent materials, and I definitely wish that I had read them before I stepped into the board chair role. No, I think it is true that a lot of us end up in these positions because of the success we have in our legal careers, and also because we've been able to forge relationships with other people in the firm. But in terms of like the skills that you need in order to, Mitch is kind of more of an operator runner. He actually runs the firm, whereas my job is more of a board level position. So I think the governance expertise that I brought to the job lent itself more readily to the job that I have. But I suspect Mitch probably didn't have a lot of training on the job that he has. And even within the tasks that I have and things like strategy, I feel like I have to stretch a little bit for myself personally to really focus on those things. And so I have been a voracious reader of law firm management and all sorts of materials that I can get my hands on. I'm a lot more interested in the topic now than I was before because I wasn't necessarily as focused on it. But I would say that now that I'm in this role, the one thing that I am very focused on is because we are transitioning from a firm who had I think the chapter referred to him as the Great Sonsini. Kind of everybody just followed him because he was just so, outstandingly great. But we've got a different leadership structure now where it's a lot more collaborative, it's a lot more team-oriented. And, so basically we have about 117 of our 225 partners are all involved in leadership roles at the firm. So we view it as a huge opportunity to develop those lawyers, those partners, as starting from when they're young, and hopefully creating a dynamic where those leaders will get much more proficient training at the job than we had, stepping into it. Having said that, you'll find that with years and years of experience, you find yourself ready to take on bigger tasks than you thought you were capable of in the end of the day, and there's a lot of people there that can help. But in terms of the actual training, I it would have been nice to have a little bit more, but that's just my firm. And my firm is still a first-generation firm. Some of the other firms that are a little older, they might have more formalized training in that regard.
Yeah, I can't say when I first came up and, for example, ran the Menlo Park office that I got a lot of formal training at that time. I'll tell you a couple things. One is there is a lot more training offered today. So we collaborate with various academic institutions on training programs. We put together some of our own with respect to leadership in particular. And that's both for associates as well as partners and as well as staff. So we have a lot more in the way of programs now, and ones that are broad-based as well as ones that are coaching specifically on public speaking or being a better supervisor or strategic planning or what have you. But the other thing I would really want to emphasize is there's no one type of great leader, right? So much depends upon one's personality in the first place, but in today's day and age, I think what's so important is to be a good listener, because you learn from everybody, right? On this earth, there's something to learn, and so you want to really listen, both to learn for yourself, but also to offer advice and be responsive and whatnot, and to be authentic. So you want to be yourself. You don't want to copy somebody else because it won't work. You have to be comfortable in your own skin, and that's the best part about being a leader is combining that role with your own personality.
Boy, I think that's so well said. You know, and I think that's true, by the way. Not just being a law firm leader, it's true in the way you practice law. You know, you're going to find various partners that you'll work with if you go to a big law firm, and you can typically extract 1 or 2 lessons from each of them, but I mean, maybe 5 or 6 other things about them that you either don't want to replicate or can't replicate. But picking and choosing little pieces from folks and trying to say, that's an authentic thing that I could get better at. It's a real reflection of who I'd like to be, and modeling little pieces from other people is a really good way to go about it. And, you know, each of Katie and Aura and I are transactional lawyers who have the benefit of spending a lot of time in client board meetings. That's also an opportunity to, you know, transport yourself mentally into what would I do in that situation, okay? This person's about to give a report from the vice president of sales. We missed the sales quarter, set a target for this quarter in a material way. How should they approach that? You know, and if you just spend a few seconds doing that, you get a mini lesson every time you're going to a board meeting, which is something we're all doing all the time in terms of thinking about how would I handle that situation, which is great. The last thing I'd say is, I think one thing about legal education, if I had a magic wand and could change it, or at least, and maybe change in ways I'm not aware of, I took a fair number of classes at business school while I was at law school, in addition to law school classes. And I love the fact that they were group-based, because all of our work from day one practicing law is in a group setting. And that was something I didn't somehow anticipate coming out of law school. You know, I was like, well, you know, it's kind of an individual undertaking, and I can write a good memo, and you know, the first thing you're doing is great, show up at Oracle, read this box of materials, give this report to the following 2 people in front of you, and manage this other person who's somehow lower on the totem pole than you are, and make this all work. I said, well, where's the memo part? I can do that, you know, like I can read this case. It is a very different undertaking and a much more communal and team-oriented undertaking than I anticipated. And I guess one thing I would say is there is an opportunity, in journals or through whatever you're doing, it's a collective undertaking, to train yourself, what I think is to both practice and to lead in a law firm setting. And I'd think about that issue of how often are you working in a team setting. And it's a really important part of what we do every day as practitioners, no less as leaders.
Yeah, and you know, all of my classes now, I have reflection teams.
That's great.
You know, I want people, no matter what the size of the
I think
class,
that's quite rare.
Yeah, well, the faculty's got to, you know, we could start to learn from some of what's going on in practice. My colleagues, it's herding cats too. You know, they're pretty set in their ways. They teach Fed Lit, and they don't really, you know, think it needs to change. Anyway, this has been such a great panel. Join me in thanking our really busy guests.